mine just going?
He's, yeah, we're recording.
Pretty much. Alright. The adults in the room. There we go. Let me do that. Wait, stop. Man is the only relational creature. If you think about it, most of what gives us meaning as mankind are our relationships. You consider things like marriage, family, church going, pictures we carry on our walls, cemeteries. All of those are summed up in relationships. What are the things that generate our gigantic joys? What are the sources of our strongest sorrows? It's all centered around relationships. The Mayo Clinic put out a report that highlighting what causes depression, and as you look at the list, the majority of things that produce depression are relationship related. Either you were abused by somebody that loved you, you've lost a loved one, you have a difficult relationship with a loved one, or you just feel inadequate around other people. It's all relationship driven. It makes total sense then that as creatures that value relationship, we would like to have a simple way to stay connected to people that matter. Now, cell phones have proven to be a simple way to do just that. Can I borrow that cell phone, by the way? They did not, well, thanks for turning it on. They did not take the world by storm when Motorola first came out with the first commercial cell phone back in 1983. It would be about 10 years later, in the mid-90s, that cell phones became pretty common. Now, if you look at about 10 years ago, you found out that what happened was we had something that came along that actually was a simple way to stay connected. We no longer had to be tied to a home location or try to find a payphone somewhere. We could simply get a hold of the people that we cared about. That all started changing about 10 years ago as the technology morphed. Because no longer did you just go into the store and buy a cell phone. You now have the opportunity to buy a smartphone. Unfortunately, although we call them smartphones, because they can hopefully help us to be smarter, I'm going to show you how they've actually made us dumber. And I'm going to show you how extensive use of our smartphone not only wastes time, don't raise your hands on that, but also diminishes our quality of life. The major problem with smartphones that we have is not what they're able to do for us, but what they're actually able to do to us. They're addictive. They're highly addictive. According to the Pew Research Center, from last year, 68% of Americans now own a smartphone. And many of those that own the smartphone are actually in some way addicted to it. Harris Interactive reports in their surveys that smartphone owners typically will not go 1 hour without checking them. Can't go an hour. I think about cigarette smokers. I think they maybe smoke about once an hour. Well, hey, we're addicted like them. Almost 2 out of every 3 smartphone owners would be upset if they left home without it. Don't raise your hands, but how many of you have realized as you're going away that you left it and you turn around and go back and get it? Don't answer that. 97% of owners admit that they check their phones occasionally while they're in the presence of family and friends. How important are you to me when I'm doing this with you around? And according to an article in Psychology, Research, and Behavior Management Journal, there's now a clinical name for smartphone addiction. It's called Nomophobia. Nomophobia, which is essentially, it's the fear of remaining out of touch with technology. It's not just that you have to go back home and get it, it's just when you have it, you have to constantly be engaged with it so you don't lose track of the information that's on there, what's going on in there. So if most everyone's addicted to their smartphone, then the next logical question we might ask is why? Why are we drawn back to it again and again, needing to check it every few minutes? Why is she still bothered that I have her smartphone at this point? Well, the answer is a chemical in our brain called dopamine. And you may have heard of dopamine, and you may instantly think, well, dopamine is the chemical that controls pleasure in a certain part of the brain. Well, according to psychology today, recent research is actually changing that view. Dopamine actually causes you to want, or to desire, or to seek out. So it's not that dopamine gives you pleasure. Dopamine actually fuels your search for things that might give you pleasure. Well, what is there to seek on a smartphone? Things like browsing the internet, texting and instant messaging, social media like Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, things like Google, search engines, right? Dopamine gets you on the path to finding something. And then you get it, you get that response back, or you find that link you're looking for, and you want to go and search more. In fact, recent research now suggests that 140 characters, think Twitter here, comes with an even greater addictive drive because it doesn't satisfy us. We want more. So, smartphones might be addictive. I get that. So I get a little dopamine drive when I'm using it. Okay, but it's only affecting me, right? What's the problem if it only affects me? Well, I'm glad you asked that. There are two major problems with smartphone addiction. The first one is actually physical effects. Viewing a digital screen for hours on end does not do your eyes very good. Some people get blurred vision, headaches. And then you think of this, what's your neck doing as you're looking at it? Your neck's twisted down, causes neck strain over time. And then, phones are major germ carriers. The statistic is that 1 out of every 6 phones has fecal matter on it. Which means at least one person in the room, I'm going to put this back now, one person in the room has a poopy phone. And the danger while driving is understated. Texting while driving is more dangerous than driving while intoxicated. The second major problem, and I would suggest this is actually more of a problem than the physical problems, is the psychological effects. First of all, cell phone addiction can cause sleep problems. I mean, if you think about it, you're watching a bright screen before you go to sleep. That triggers your brain that it's time to wake up, not go to sleep. Also, you're creating your own obsessive compulsive disorder by using it repeatedly. You ever felt your cell phone vibrate in your pocket and it wasn't vibrating? Well, if you have, you may have OCD. And psychologists are seeing nomophobics that have anxiety attacks. They're having depression because of cell phone use. And finally, and this is the major one as far as I'm concerned, is that offline relationships, one-to-one with people, the people you personally want to see and visit, suffer because you favor talking on your cell phone or connecting via social media. That's the biggest tragedy. So those are the two big problems with smartphone use and addictions, but the fact is, okay, we have an addiction. Maybe assume that we can even admit that maybe we might have a problem. That should lead us to the healthy question of, okay, what can I do about it? Well, several ideas you can incorporate on how you use your smartphone to lessen the control it has over you. First of all, you might, just try to pay attention to when you're needing to use it or what emotional state you're under when you grab it. Are you feeling when you have to check it tired or frustrated or lonely? And then second, start monitoring how often you have to check the phone. Maybe you discover, I have to check it every 5 minutes. Well, lengthen that. Maybe make it every 15. Lengthen it to 30 and then an hour. And then try to turn the ringer completely off at times. I'm not even talking vibrate. I'm saying ringer completely off. Or maybe you just train yourself to not always have to answer it when it rings. And yeah, that's right. I'm suggesting don't even answer it. I'm saying when it rings, at times, don't even pick it up and look at it. Ignore it completely. Urgent does not always mean important. We need to understand that. How about building in disciplined times where you just don't use it? Maybe you get home from work, 5 to 7 p.m., you decide that's it. That's my family time. I'm powering it completely off, and putting it away. And then finally, another option is just to remove all the social media off of the smartphone. You want to do Facebook? That's fine. Do it on the laptop or the other computer. Don't do it on the smartphone. I began by noting how the only truly relational creature is man. And smartphones should help us to be more relational, but the sad reality is that, as with anything that's addictive, they can harm or even destroy the relationships that matter to most of us. The dopamine that's released is at the very least making us less engaged with those that matter to us because our focus is on the phone, not the people right near us. And over time, we're going to experience physical and psychological problems because of the addiction. And it doesn't have to be that way. As I highlighted, there's several things we can actually do to disconnect, disengage, and weaken the hold it has on us. Smartphones are called smart because of a lot of the features they have built into them. But there are times, though, one of the smartest things that they can do is to be powered off. And that, my friends, is putting the smart back into smartphones.